So if I take this torch and put it on my face, it's not a big of a deal. It's not hurting me. You know why? Because I'm wearing these glasses. Now, what are these glasses doing? As we pass the light through the glasses, trust me, it's very bright as you can see. As we pass the light, it is reducing the amount of light passing through these glasses. In other words, we can say that this is a filter. And why is it a filter? Because it is altering the vision in some way. Similarly, in Photoshop, a filter is something that alters the image in some way, shape or form. Take a look at this interesting slider. As we take it to the right, it is blurring everything but the face. It keeps the face in focus and it creates a beautiful, soft focus effect. In other words, it is altering the image in some way. In other words, it is a filter. We'll get to this beautiful filter later, but the point is, a filter can be as simple as a blur. Let's take a look at this example. So here we have a model. Let's say we want to add some colors to it. Instead of adding an adjustment layer, we can simply bring another image. Let's say this one. We're just going to drag it and drop it right there. Let's say if we love the colors of this image. We're just going to rotate it, make it a bit larger like this, and let's just blur it by going to Filter, emphasis, Filter. You'll find all the filters right here. Blur. Let's choose Gaussian blur. One of the most common blurs. You're going to be using it time and again. Let's increase it so much that we lose all the details and only keep in the colors and the tone. So let's set it to about really high number, like 600 pixels. Hit OK. And now you can play with blend modes. So you can hover through different blend modes to get a preview. Let's say I like overlay, but this is too much, right? So let's decrease the opacity to about 50%. Let's take a look at the before and after. So here's the before and here is the after. Now this, my friend, is a very simple filter, just a blur. And you can modify it even further. So let's say we create a curves adjustment layer. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose curves. And let's say you want to make the darks of this color darker. You want to limit the curves just to this layer. So click on this button. An arrow will show up. That way it is limited just to this layer. And then you can play with the sliders, bring things up or down. There you go. That is something I like. Let us take a look at the before and after. So here's the before, here's the after. The attention is going back to the face. If you don't like it too much, you can decrease the opacity even further. Just a hair bit of it makes a hell lot of difference. This is common, not popping as much. Here's the after. Just take a look, adding that brightness back to the face. So what did we learn? A filter can be as simple as a blur. On the other hand, it can be as complex as this one. Let's say you want to restore this super old image. Press Ctrl or Command J, always have a backup. Ctrl or Command J makes a duplicate. Now let's go to Filter again. And this time we're going to go ahead and choose Neural Filters. It uses artificial intelligence. And in here, we will turn on Photo Restoration. This is a relatively newer one. You'll find it in the later versions of Photoshop. And as you turn it on, most of the scratches are gone. The image is improved. So here's the before, here's the after. You can enhance the face even more if you wish. You can reduce the scratch even more if you wish. That's up to you. And on top of it, if you want to colorize it, just turn on Colorize. And it will automatically colorize. You can modify it, make it cleaner, it's up to you. But just with 2 switches, it creates a hell of a difference. So here's the before and here is the after. Now you have filters that come with Photoshop that are already built into Photoshop, but you also have third-party filters that you can install. In other words, plugins. Sometimes when you install certain plugins, it comes up inside of filters. For example, in this case, one of the plugins I use from time to time is Retouch for Me series. You can try it for free. I'll link it up in the description. So press Ctrl or Command J. Let's say we want to retouch this. I'm going to go to Filter, and this will only show up once you install the plugin. So this is Retouch for Me. We're going to go with Heal. Now do keep in mind, I don't recommend this plugin for beginners, only for professionals. If you're making money off of your work, this is a good investment. But you can always play around with it. Trial version links are in the description. So let's increase the sensitivity of detecting the blemishes. So let's put it all the way high. You also have the option to turn on Make Mask and click on Apply. It beautifully removes all the blemishes. Let's take a look at the details. So here's the before and here is the after, and keeps the skin natural. On top of it, we can create a stamp visible layer. In other words, a brand new layer with everything merged in. everything that you see in the canvas. And the way to do that is pressing Ctrl, Alt, Shift, and E. Quite a shortcut. Now let's do some dodging and burning. We're going to go to Filter again, Retouch for me, Dodge Burn. Now you can choose how much you want to dodge burn, low, high, it's up to you. I'm going to have it all the way to the right, soft light layer turned on, and click on Apply. It creates a beautiful soft light layer. See, brighter are the areas where it has dodged and darker are the areas where it has burned. In other words, brighten some areas and darken some areas. Now the rest of the areas are gray, which means that if we change the blend mode to soft light, those would be hidden, brighter areas would be brightened, and darker areas would be darkened. Let us choose soft light and let's take a look at the before and after. So here's the before and here's the after. Hell of a difference. So overall, before and after. And it keeps everything natural. So far, what did we learn? A filter is something that alters the image in some way, shape, or form. It can be as simple as a blur or as complex as photo restoration. It can be built into Photoshop like Gaussian blur, field blur, photo restoration, colorize, or it can be a plugin like Retouch for me, we did the demo. And just as a reminder, you find the filters inside of the filter menu bar. Now you must know something about repeat filters. The way it works is that let's say you apply any filter. Let's go to Filter, Noise, and add noise, about 40. Now this is not what we're going to do to an image, but this is just for an example. Hit OK. Let's say we added noise, all right? And then we made a few copies and let's say this is a completely different layer. If you go to Filter, the first one right here would be the previous filter that you applied with the same value. Of course, you can go to Filter, Noise, and add noise. But if you pick this one, which would be the last filter applied, it would apply the noise with 40. So your previous applied filter with the same value will always be at the top. Now there's a big problem with just applying a filter. Let's understand this by creating a beautiful vintage effect. Let's say we made a copy of the background layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J, and we blurred it all by going to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. Let's choose a higher value, but not so high, something around 80. Hit OK. Let's add some noise to it. Let's go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Not so much noise, about 24-ish would be nice. Uniform, monochromatic is fine. Hit OK. Now the noise is way too sharp, so let's go to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur again. And this time let's add a little bit blur to the noise. This much is fine. Hit OK. Now for the effect, we simply reduce the opacity. Now this is such a beautiful effect. But the problem is, we cannot go back. Let's say you want to change the value of the blur that you applied at first. There is no way you can do that. You would have to undo everything and let go of all the progress. Now the way to fix it is using smart filters. You might ask, how can I make the filters smart? It's easy. Let's delete this. Let's redo everything. First of all, let's make a copy of the background layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J. Right when you convert a layer into a smart object, whatever filter you apply will be a smart filter. So right now let's go to Filter and then Convert for Smart Filters. It says it right there. Now when you apply any filter, let's go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Let's go with 80 like we did before. Let's add some noise by going to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. 24 is fine. Hit OK. Let's apply Gaussian Blur again. Let's go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. 0.8. So 80.8, that's a nice combination. Now, you have the freedom to go back to the Gaussian blur by double-clicking right here, hit OK, and you can change the value from right here. Let's say instead of 80, I wanted 82. This is just for illustration. There you go. Let's say you wanted to decrease the amount of noise. So double-click right here, hit OK, and then you can decrease or increase the amount of noise. So you have all the control right here. On top of that, you can also control the opacity of each filter. So if you double click on this button right there, you can even change the blend mode of this Gaussian blur. So you can of course decrease the opacity, change the blend mode of this Gaussian blur. I highly encourage you to experiment with this. Now this is getting way advanced. Let's take a step back and let's not apply this for the moment. Instead of just simply decreasing the opacity, first of all, let's set it to about 50. we want a little bit of the highlights. So to bring the highlights back, we need to take this effect away from the highlights. How do we do that? We just learned it in the BlendIf lesson. If you haven't watched it, you can watch it right here after this video. So double click on the right hand side of the layer. Let's take it away from the bright areas of the underlying layer or the layer that lies under it by taking this slider from the right to left. All right. Now hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the slider to break it apart and take it all apart. And I'm going to do it up until this point. Also, let's take it away from the shadows too. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on it to break it apart and keep it something like this. Now that's looking interesting. Hit OK. Let's take a look at the before and after. So here's the before, here's the after. Look at that effect. This is just too normal, not as dreamy, but as soon as you turn it on, take a look at this. Now we also want to make it a little more dramatic. So let's make a copy of this one. Press Ctrl or Command J, and in this copy, we don't want the BlendIf. So the easiest way to take that away is right-clicking on that layer and choosing Clear Layer Style. It takes that away. And now you can change the blend mode to something like, let's go for Soft Light. That is nice. Let's set it to about 60. And here is the overall image, dramatic and dreamy. So here's the before, and here is the after. By the way, you can collapse all of these filters that you applied by clicking on this button. There you go, it's collapsed. You can open it again by clicking on this button again and modify any of this whenever you want. Now let's talk about the most important and most exciting filters in Photoshop. We already talked about Gaussian blur. Let's take it a notch advanced and talk about some advanced blurs. First of all, let's make a copy of the background layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J. Let's go to filter. Let's not forget convert for smart filter so that we can change the values later. By the way, do keep in mind that once you convert a layer into a smart object, there are certain filters that go gray. In other words, you cannot apply them. Like vanishing point, lens blur, those are used rarely anyway. Now let's go to filter, and the blurs that we are talking about is inside of blur gallery. Let's choose any one of those. Let's go with iris blur. And inside of this whole new dialog box, you'll find different kinds of blurs that you can apply simultaneously. So let's say we want to apply some iris blur. The way it works is that if you increase it, everything outside of this boundary goes at blur 204 or whatever value you choose, like 185. So everything outside of this boundary of this ellipse is blurred at 185 pixels. Everything inside of these 4 dots, 4 points, is blurred at 0. So inside of these 4 points, it is 0. Outside of this boundary, it is whatever value you choose. And from these dots to the edge, right here, the blur gradually increases from 0 to whatever value you have chosen. So in this case, it is 185. So it gradually goes from 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, up until 185 till this point. So the way I like to use it is creating a soft focus effect. Let's make it a bit longer, something like this, and bring it to the center like this. You can increase or decrease the size. It's up to you. Now you can change these points. So let's bring these points closer. You can also individually move these points. If you hold the Alt key or the Option key, you can individually move these points like this. Now the blur is of course too much, so let's keep it at this level. At about 84 is fine. Now we don't want her body to be so blurred as well, so you can create multiple points right here. So let's create one more point by clicking here, and let's make it a bit larger like this, and then let's bring the points closer like this. But now there is another problem. The body is too sharp. So there's another blur you can apply here, and that is field blur. Let's turn that on as well. Let's go to field blur. Now what field blur allows you to do is that it allows you to create different points, and it allows you to have different blurs in different areas. So this is a point. Let's say on her face, I want 0 blur. And let's say on her clothes right here, let's create another point. We want the blur to be a little more, something like this. Let's adjust it properly. You can always go back to iris blur and adjust these points. I'm going to take this point a little up and go back to field blur again and increase the blur right here like this. And let's move it right here. Hit OK once you're satisfied. And at any point in time, you can always change these values by double clicking on blur gallery. You can open up iris blur, move it around, change the blur. You can open up field blur, select this and change the blur amount. It's all up to you. Now the blur gallery also has certain effects. Sometimes the sharp areas has some noise. So when you blur other areas, the noise also gets blurred, so you have to introduce some noise. So you can always go back to blur gallery and go to the noise tab right here, and you can introduce some noise in the blurred areas. Let me zoom in to show it clearly to you. So as you do increase the amount of noise, have a look, noise is added to the blurred areas. So we can also do it as a part of an effect. So let's go for about 12%. You can change the size, the roughness, the color. So you have all the freedom to do whatever you want. Now something isn't sitting right on this image. I think we need to do a little bit of dodging and burning. I'm going to use retouch for me. So let's create a stamp visible layer by pressing Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E. You can skip this, absolutely optional. Let's go to filter, retouch for me, dodge burn. That looks pretty amazing. Hit apply and change the blend mode to soft light. And just by doing that, this looks so darn professional. So here's the before and here is the after. Now there's one more filter that's going to make this image pop. It's one of the most used, most amazing, most common and most important filters, and that is Adobe Camera Raw as a filter. First of all, let's create a stamp visible layer again by pressing Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E. Let's go to filter, convert for smart filters, hit OK, and this time let's go to filter and Camera Raw filter right here. Now this is such an incredible filter, there should be a different lesson just for Camera Raw. In this, let's touch upon the basics. So of course you have all of these sliders for temperature, tint right here. You can change the exposure, the contrast, the highlights, and just by randomly moving sliders, here's the before, here's the after. It looks so much better, right? And by the way, how do you look at the before and after? Press P before, P again after. You have sliders for texture, clarity, dehaze. You can also create masks and apply different amounts in different areas, and we're going to cover it in a future lesson. You can also use a ton of presets built into Camera Raw. These are amazing. All you have to do is to go to presets right here. So this is the presets section. This is where you make adjustments, edit section, preset section. Inside of it now you also have adaptive presets. So you can open this up and let's say you want to enhance the eyes. Just hover through every preset to see what it does. Enhance eyes, as soon as I hover through it, have a look, it automatically enhances the eyes. So here's the before and here is the after. And you can even create your own presets. So for example, I want to enhance the eyes and then darken the eyebrows and make a few edits right here, increase the contrast like this, and you can save it as your own preset. So let's go to presets, click on this button right here called create preset, click on that, and you can choose to include the masking. Let's save it as Unmesh, that's fine. User presets, hit OK. And inside of user presets, it's gonna show up Unmesh right here. By the way, there's a preset that I created which I absolutely love, and it is the Pix Warm preset. I'm gonna give it to you. You can download it. Link is in the description. Let's click on it, and there you go. It instantly, absolutely changes the style of the image. Hit OK. Let's take a look at the overall before and after. So here's the before, and here is the after. So as you can see, filters can absolutely create a night and day difference in your image. One of the other most important filters is Liquify. Sometimes you need it to make people smart. So let's make a copy of this layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J. Now this is an absolutely handsome man. We can make him smarter by nudging him a little bit. I'm not asking to push it in and make him slim. Just make him smarter. Here's how. Let's go to filter, Liquify. Sometimes the camera angles are not very pleasing. So here's what we do. The most common tools you need to know about is the forward warp tool right here and the reconstruct tool. You can choose the forward warp tool and push anything around. It acts like a thick liquid. So let's make the brush bigger. You can hold the Alt key or the Option key, the right mouse button, drag it to the right to make it bigger, drag it to the left to make it smaller, drag it up and down to increase or decrease the pressure right here. So you can push things around like this, all right, with the forward warp tool. If you think you have unnecessarily moved some areas, you can use the reconstruct tool. If you paint with it right here, as the name suggests, it reconstructs everything. To reset everything, you can scroll down and click on restore all. It resets everything. It also detects the face right here. And if there are multiple faces, you can use the drop down to pick whatever face you want to target. And then you can increase or decrease the smile. Hey, let's make him smile a bit. And that's nicer. You can change the upper lip a little bit, lower lip, mouth width. You can also modify the face shape if you wish. We can make the face width a little tighter like this. Control the jawline like this. Make slight changes. This seems about right. And with the forward warp tool, the shortcut is W. Let's press that. I recommend decreasing the pressure, keeping it low and nudging things down. It's not just making him slimmer, but also pushing things in here and a little bit there and making the shoulders broader and the arms a bit thicker so that it balances things out. Nudge slowly. That is the secret of the Liquify tool. Now there's one absolute mistake that I did. Can you tell what that is? I forgot to convert the layer into a smart object. So let me redo that for you. Make a copy of the background layer. Let's go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, hit OK, and then apply Liquify. Let's go to Liquify. The last applied one will be right here. But since we have converted it into a smart object, we have to redo everything right now. So this is done. By the way, anytime you feel you have done too much, you can always scroll down and click on Reconstruct. And it's simply an undo on a slider. If the slider is all the way to the left, this is the original image. As you increase it, all of the changes you made happen slowly and gradually. So you can tone down your changes by using this slider right here. This is more natural, but I'm going to keep it this way just to share with you the difference. Hit OK. Let's take a look. So here's the before and here is the after. We have not changed the character of the person, the overall theme, in other words, of the subject the way he is. But in a way, we have changed the camera angles and the way the clothes just fit. But if you still think it's too much, you can always double click on Liquify, scroll down, go to Reconstruct and reduce the amount of changes you have made. So you can set it to about, let's say 76, hit OK, hit OK. There you go. This is more natural. Before, after, still. Night and day difference. If you want to learn more about Liquify, I've done a few videos on it. You can check it out. Links in description. Now these series of filters are usually kind of obsolete, but you can experiment with it if you like. So let's make a copy of the background layer. Let's go to Filter. Let's not forget Convert for Smart Filters. And then this is Filter Gallery right here. Now it's a gallery of artistic filters that used to be there in the old days of Photoshop, but it's still there and you can still experiment with it. And there are groups like artistic. Inside of it, you have fresco, you have cutout, different filters right here. Inside of distort, you have different ones. Inside of brush strokes, you have different ones. Let's go for angle strokes. Let's increase the stroke length. You can control the sharpness. And there's not much explaining right here. I recommend you play with these sliders to see what they do. Different ones have different kinds of sliders. So I'm going to increase the stroke length a little more, something like this. And you can stack multiple filters if you wish. So on top of angle stroke, we can create one more by clicking on plus right here. And it's also set to angle strokes, but we can change it to something else. Let's go to artistic and change it to watercolor right here. Not too much shadow intensity. Brush detail, let's decrease it. Hit OK. And I have to say, it's pretty nice. So here's the before and here's the painted version. So that's all about filters in Photoshop. This was just an introduction. I highly recommend that you play with each filter, see what they do. You know what filters are. It alters the image in some way, shape or form. And you know where to find it. You can find it inside of the Filters tab, menu bar at the top. Now there can be simple filters like the blur or complex filters like photo restoration. And there can be third-party filters as well, like Retouch for Me. Check the link in the description to try it out. All in all, keep in mind, whenever you apply a filter, apply it in a way so that it is non-destructive, so that you can always go back and change the values later. One of the ways to do it is converting the layer into a smart object by going to Filter and then Convert for Smart Filters. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss any other future tips, tricks or tutorials. I would like to take this moment to thank all of these nice and amazing people for supporting PiXimperfect on Patreon and helping keep PiXimperfect free for everybody forever. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.
We're up here.